And I think we're live.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to, I think it's 65, episode 65 of the Technology for Good show. My name is Tom Raftery. I'm with a company called Redmonk. I'm an industry analyst. And with me co-hosting, I have Chris.
Hi, Chris Kernahan, Principal Consultant at Bluefin Solutions, General Techie and Cloud Architect. So thank you very much for having me back, Tom.
Not at all, not at all. Always a pleasure, Chris. And we have a number of stories and things that we'll be going through today. There's been a couple of themes stood out of the stories this week. Interestingly, transportation has come up in a lot of the stories we'll be talking about, and also energy.
Yeah.
So we'll head into the stories. And the first one I saw, and it's the usual with this show. If you haven't watched before, we talk a little bit at the start about some bad news, and then we hit into good news after that, and it's all good news stories. The bad news is kind of setting a bit of an agenda, and then the good news is the fact that technology is helping us out of all the mess that we've put ourselves into.
Absolutely.
So, starting off with the bad news, and this is a story around how snow cover in the Northern Hemisphere is at record lows and why that should worry you. And this takes data. You can see here, this chart is a map, a global map of the Northern Hemisphere. You've got the US down here in the bottom, and Asia kind of circling around with the centered around the Arctic. And all that brown area is where you can see reduced snow cover for that period.
Who's your percent?
And the percentage goes from -5 to -100, basically, going from the center out to the left there in the graph at the bottom, or in the legend at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is hugely problematic for a number of reasons. It's reduced albedo effect. It would be the first problem that you get from that. Reduced albedo effect means you've reduced reflection from the snow that would be there. The snow that's normally there would reflect the heat back out into the atmosphere, whereas without that snow there, you've got darker ground which absorbs the heat, and that absorption of the heat then can melt the permafrost underneath and lead to all kinds of problems for vegetation that's there, for structures that are there. Roads, for example, are collapsing with the reduced permafrost. Buildings are collapsing as well. Sorry, say again, Chris?
The methane emissions, the methyl hydrides.
Methane emissions, exactly. You get methane emissions from microbes in the soil coming alive that should be dormant, and as well you get problems with wildfires. And we saw that last week. We talked about there being over 1,000 wildfires happening last week, all the way from Southern California right up through Alaska, and there's another story I saw this week about the number of wildfires that are happening in Alaska and Canada this year, and it's off the charts in terms of anything they've had before.
Yeah,
So
there's another graph in that in that story about halfway down, which I see puts it into context against previous years, and I think the worst year was 2012, but this is the second worst year after that. And I think that really puts it into context.
Yes, and while it is the second worst year after 2012, and that's obvious from the chart there now, what it is the graph or the bar there for 2012 is for the full year, whereas we're only in early July yet of 2015. So the 2015, the fire season and the snow season and the melt season keep going for another few months. So that bar there for 2015 is only going to get longer and will likely pass 2012 because it's further along than 2012 was at this point in the year.
But the flip side, if it didn't pass 2012, that actually is a problem in itself, because it means that there's more extreme weather and there's more snowfall, perhaps unseasonably more, which actually causes problems in its own right.
Sure. Yeah.
Just because it doesn't surpass 2012, it's not necessarily a point to celebrate.
No, absolutely not. I mean, if I'll just call that graph up on screen there again, and maybe just taking another quick look at it, you can see that the trend there from 67, which is the first year, right across to 2015, the trend is downwards the whole time. And really it starts to flip under and stay under from around 2004 onwards, and it hasn't gone above the mean since then.
Yeah.
And it's not obvious until you actually read the legend, but the vertical axis is million square kilometers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty damn big.
It is.
So, you know, minus 4 million square kilometers, you know, that's a lot. That's a lot. 1 square kilometer is a lot, never mind 4 million of them.
I know.
Anyway, we'll move on to better news.
Yes.
I think it's time for some good news stories now. So the next story that I saw that I thought was interesting was this one about the army scientists in the US. And, you know, it's a real case of necessity being the mother of invention, I think.
Yeah.
The army scientists in the US have built what they call smaller, tougher, cheaper solar cells. And basically, the solar cells are built using silicon. Where's it gone there?
It's pure, no, I think you're talking about the IBM story. This is pure silicon, isn't it? Or is it?
Oh, you're right. The
IBM story is the silicon galamite or whatever. I can't remember. But
exactly. Yeah. So this one, they've layered the silicon with different bands of gold, and what that's done is it has allowed the solar panels to absorb more wavelengths of light, as well as making the panels more robust and, ironically, or not, cheaper to manufacture as well. So. Wow. Yeah. So they're cheaper, they're stronger, they're more efficient solar panels. And I mean, we talked a lot last week about how the Swanson effect is constantly bringing down the cost of solar panels. And you know, here's another addition to that. They're still in the research phase, but they will come on stream, and they will be very useful for the army, if nobody else, but they'd be very useful for everybody else as well.
We talked about, you know, in the tropics where, you know, there's a lot of hurricanes, there's a lot of extreme weather. Again, there's a lot of sunlight. So in these environments, more robust solar cells will actually benefit those places. By solar cells are not I'm not going to say they're really fragile, but you know, they don't take a lot of abuse.
Yeah, I mean they're glass, they're covered in glass. For a start, which is brittle enough anyway.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
this will be a good thing, and hopefully it means that the solar cells will actually survive better in hurricane weather, and then because after a hurricane, there's a lot of cleanup, there's a lot of disaster relief that's required, and having to worry about your power grid whenever it's solar powered, and you know what damage is it taking. This may make life a little bit easier and help people sleep a little bit easier as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we were talking before the show. I was telling you that I talked to a combat journalist in Madrid a couple of years ago, and she was telling me that at the front lines in Afghanistan, the cost of a gallon of petrol is $450. You know, which when you can get it at the pumps in the US for, you know, $3-4 a gallon, having to pay $450 for the front lines, you know, really concentrates the minds of the army. And if you don't have to be sending trucks into combat zones with fuel, it makes a huge amount of sense, and actually is a lot safer for the guys at the front line and those truck drivers too. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Absolutely, indeed.
Anyway, we'll keep going. The next story I saw that I thought was worth talking about was this one about, and again, it's solar related. These two photographs that NASA took are of the Gobi Desert. The one on the left was taken in October 2012, and it shows an area where the Chinese are developing a solar farm. And then 2.5 years later, May 22nd, 2015, this is the same solar farm, but it has been massively developed.
Oh,
and I mean, that massive development of that solar farm took place before the Chinese announced a couple of weeks ago that they were going to triple their solar output from its current about 28 gigawatts up to over 70 gigawatts by 2017. So, you know, in 2 years' time, they're going to triple their solar. So this, I'd love to come back in 2 years' time and see this solar farm and what it looks like in 2017. I know it won't be the only place they'll do developments. Obviously, it couldn't be, but this would be one place where they're doing solar. So, it'd be fascinating to see what it looks like then.
Yeah. Well, the Gobi Desert is particularly dry. It's not. I don't think it ranks. It doesn't rank up there with the Atacama by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still pretty dry. But I think reading in that, it was a 300% increase from the 2012 to now. It would have been quite nice to get sort of a scale on that satellite photo, so you can actually fully see how big that is. But
yeah,
the Gobi Desert is quite remote in the world. So how are they getting the power from there to where it's actually needed? Because the other thing is that power distribution networks are not massively efficient. So they're
not inefficient either, really. The average losses are about 6% on distribution networks.
I thought it was somewhere around 10 or 11. So, but you would obviously you would know a hell of a lot better than I would. So you would. So
sure, it depends. It depends on how it's structured, but the latest figures I've seen are averaging around 6%. And that's still pretty significant. And if you add into that mix high voltage DC for transportation, then you reduce your losses even more, because high voltage DC it's not lossless, but it's incredibly efficient. It's far more efficient than transporting over AC, for example.
I thought DC was worse, actually, which is one of the reasons why. Because Edison was a DC guy and Tesla was an AC guy, and then
that's right.
Westinghouse partnered with
the
Tesla,
1870s, yeah.
AC won out because the transmission over distance was better for AC than DC.
Yeah, that's true. But there's this new high voltage DC technology for transportation over long distances that works incredibly well.
That's cool. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Google HVDC and you'll find loads there on it.
Cool, because I have the other one, the Gasland movie, in my.
Yes, yeah. In your queue of things to look up.
Yes, yeah. So
that's a very good movie as well.
Yes. I took a copy away with me and didn't get a chance to watch it this week, so it's if I get a chance. But cool.
All right. We'll play on. So the next story that I thought was interesting was this one about RWE, who are a large utility based in Germany. And they've, they're Germany's second largest utility. And they're looking to distributed energy technologies, as it says there, to transform its business model by piloting several projects in a bid to blah, 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 blah. Basically, what this is saying, I know, yeah. Basically, what this is saying is RWE have seen the writing on the wall, and they've started to do pilot projects around distributed energy, because they know that the future is far more likely to include much more distributed energy generation, the likes of solar and to a certain extent wind, but more so solar, for two reasons. Wind is normally large wind farms, so it's analogous to large central thermal generators like gas or whatever, whereas solar, and particularly in Germany, solar can be rooftop very much. And as we head into an era where solar's price just keeps crashing, it will become far more the norm to have at least community-based solar, if not solar rooftop or generation. And as a result, the utilities are going to need to change how they architect and how they'll need to change their business model as well to accommodate this. So ORWE, second largest utility in Germany, has projects to see how they can absorb it into their current business because, like I say, writing on the wall.
Yeah, exactly. It's the microgeneration and distributed power networks are going to be the future. So you have to, you either get with the program or become irrelevant. It's adapt or die.
It is, yeah. And the interesting thing is when you have a vastly more distributed network like that, it's more complicated to manage, certainly. But on the other hand, it's far more resilient.
Yes, but billing is more difficult as well, especially when you get to buybacks through increased generation. So if I have solar panels on my roof, it's I can sell energy back to the grid, and that's that. When you get lots and lots of microgeneration projects, that becomes quite complicated.
If only there was some kind of software program that could handle large data like that.
Yeah. yes. I know of one or two companies in the world that might do that.
Phrases like big data and analytics come to mind. I don't know where I'm getting this from. Just pulling it out of the sky.
I knew this chick called Hannah. She was big data. But yeah, well, like in my own job, we work with utilities and big data and that type of stuff. There's quite a lot of work going on in those areas around billing and smart meters and all that sort of stuff. But it all comes back to how the back end engine, as it were.
Sure. Now I remember speaking to some of the guys in Centrica when they were starting their smart grid rollout, or smart meter, rollout back 2-3 years ago. And they were saying that they were going to be moving from a situation where they took, I think it was 17 million meter reads a month, and going from that to a situation where they were taking 130 billion meter reads a month.
Yeah.
I mean, it was orders of magnitude difference. It was just boom.
Yeah.
And of course, being utility companies, there are regulations around them which mandate the length of time they have to hold that data, and it's significant.
It is.
Because it's billing data, it has to be held for something like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. No, I think it's the size of the meter read itself isn't that large.
No, it's not.
You take the customer number.
Only a few fields.
Pardon? Yeah, it's only
a few fields
and whatever. But yeah, holding billions of them is just. Yeah. But that's where technologies like Hadoop and stuff come into their own, where they're designed to be massive data stores, and then you get
and in fact, when you see things like the Large Hadron Collider puts out 1 terabit of information a second, then you kind of say, yeah, that's not really big data. That's compared to the Large Hadron Collider, that's itty bitty data.
Exactly. Yeah, the LHC does pump out a horrific amount of data, but they opened up the data archive recently, didn't they, from the last run for...
Did they? I didn't see that.
Yeah, they opened up something. They opened up a data archive from the first collection of runs that they did. So, obviously, with things like the LHC, the researchers there and the funding organizations get first crack at the data, and once they're actually finished publishing everything that they want to out of it, and they think that they've got all the insights, then they open up the data set to citizen scientists, as it were. And
nice. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but the archives are just huge. I would I would love to go and geek out and just see what their storage solution looks like. It's not insignificant. So
throw Lumira at it and see what happens.
By the way, Tammy's actually come back and said it's buzzword bingo on today's Tech for Cooks.
Excellent, excellent. Hi, Tammy. How you doing?
Hello.
So Tammy would be interested in this next one because it came to us via Steve Rumsby.
Yes, absolutely.
And Tammy knows Steve well. And it's about the University of Warwick, and that's where Steve works, as far as I remember, which is why he sent it on. He sent me a link to a different report, one on the Business Green website, but I found this one to be a more complete story than the Business Green one, but also B, Business Green tends to drop their stories after a day or two behind a registration wall, so I typically don't link to their stories. So the University of Warwick has divested from fossil fuels, and this is part of an ongoing campaign being run by the 350.org crowd to get large universities and governments to divest, to sell basically any stocks or shares they have in fossil fuel companies, to try and basically, it's for two very good reasons. It's because you don't want to be seen to be supporting fossil fuel companies, number one, but number two, with us having reached peak carbon, the value of the fossil fuel companies is going to crash pretty soon, because people will realize that 80% of their value is going to have to stay in the ground, which means their share price is going to collapse. Exactly. And you really don't want to be holding their shares when that happens. Yes. So it's good investment advice to get the hell out of fossil fuels as quickly as possible for those two reasons alone. There are plenty of other good reasons, obviously, but right there you've got very good reasons. And the University of Warwick only had about £1 million in its fossil fuel investments. So it's not a huge divestment. It's not going to shake the marketplace or anything like that. But what it does do is it sends a further signal, and it gives other universities and organizations in other third-level institutions a sign to hold up and say, look, Warwick did it. And as we mentioned earlier, Chris, when we were chatting before the show, Cambridge and Oxford are doing it as well. And there's a couple of the big ones in the US doing it as well. Manchester. So, it's Winchester. Okay, I didn't know that.
No, Manchester University. It says
Manchester
University has about 9.5 million in fossil fuels, and the decision is next week. So that'll be interesting as well.
Hopefully that'll be a story we'll be talking about next week.
Absolutely. It'd be nice to see. So it would be nice to see.
And the next story that I thought was interesting as well, again speaks to fossil fuels, but this time it's to do with Facebook and what they've done. Again, it's a nice signal to the marketplace. Similar to the last story, this is a model of what Facebook's new data center in Texas and Fort Worth is going to look like. It's an architect's model, and this is their next big data center, and they go big on their data centers, and it's going to be 100% renewably powered, which is fantastic. They talk about the continuing work in data center design, and they do amazing stuff on data center design. They reckon it's helped save them more than $2 billion in infrastructure costs over the last 3 years. And what they've done around infrastructure design is they've completely open sourced it using the Open Compute project and brought in partners. And all the partners are working together to continually improve data center design, and it's all open sourced. But like I say, they then went ahead and made sure that their Fort Worth plant will be powered by 100% renewable energy, thanks to 200 megawatts of new wind energy that they're going to bring onto the Texas grid as part of the deal. So, they made it a condition of their siting that 200 megawatts of wind energy would be brought onto the Texas grid. Kudos to Facebook for that. That's really impressive. It's the same kind of thing we see Apple doing as well in Ireland and Denmark, and Facebook did it in Finland as well. I think it was with their data center there.
So we saw, was it last week or the week before, when we saw the density of wind generation in the US? I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and down in Texas, actually, Texas did have quite a lot of blue in that picture, so it was quite interesting. The only thing that springs to mind to me in this is the fact you're putting a data center in a state that actually is very warm in general.
Yeah.
It's not they have data centers in Oregon and North Carolina and Sweden, and they are much more northern states. I think Carolina's a bit further north than all the rest of it. So
it is in Texas, yeah.
Yeah. Texas doesn't exactly have low temperatures. You're going to need a lot of air conditioning and things like that, but it's renewable power, so that's okay. But certainly it was what went through my head was Texas data center. That's a lot of power and a lot of cooling. So it is.
Well, this is the thing, because they've open sourced their data center design. They cut way down on requirements for aircon. In fact, what they do for most of their data centers is they do evaporative cooling, so they don't do any aircon.
Water tanks.
So, and it's not water tanks either. It's another way of doing it. I've forgotten the details of it, but it's that they have these huge fans, and they have like a filter, and they put air down, or sorry, they put moisture down the filter, and the fans blow through it, and the evaporation causes cooling, and that air comes into the data center then.
Oh, fabulous!
Yeah, it's really impressive stuff.
That is. Some of the
therefore it doesn't require chiller units, and the chiller units are the real power hogs in any data center.
Yeah. Excellent. I remember that data center in Las Vegas. What is it? Node One. Pardon?
The switch NAP.
Yeah, the switch NAP. That one. They have a proprietary cooling system. They have they have all the servers in cabinets, and I find that cooling system to be really, really interesting.
It was. Yeah, I got a tour of it. Were you inside it?
No. It was
fascinating.
Someone else, I think it was the Reg, got a tour of it or something like that, and because they'd obviously patented the design, and they were selling it to other data centers. So they were But
the guy who developed it, interestingly, his name is Rob Roy. Seriously.
Excellent. Oh man,
a very bright guy.
Yeah,
very great.
Well, the story of
a number of interesting deals there.
Yeah, the story of how that data center came about is fascinating in its own right. So it is very, very fascinating. He took a punt, and Jesus, that paid off. That paid off so well. But anyway, let's crack on. We've got the world to feed with the next story.
That's right. Although Kerrien Tillotson has just left a comment there saying that she's prioritizing the Federer versus Murray Wimbledon match over and above us, which is, her priorities are all messed up, obviously.
I know. She just fancies Roger. That's the problem.
Anyway, we'll crack on. As you say, the next story is this one about food, and we've talked about vertical farming before on the show, and this is a story about coming out of Philips, where they're talking about having this indoor farm using LED lights, and how that could help solve world hunger. I think they could help solve world hunger. Might be a little bit hyperbolic. Might be exaggerating just slightly, but I think there is a huge place for vertical and indoor farming in the future. I think that's where the future of food production, at least vegetable food production or plant-based food production, will be. I think the future of meat-based food production will be VAT-based as well, but people don't like to hear that. So. But I think it will be. But anyway, the plant-based food production will be in something like this, because it takes up far less space, and the plant food produced from it is by design. It is de facto organic. It is disease-free. It is fertilizer-free. It is pesticide-free. It is herbicide-free. It's got a much smaller carbon footprint. It's got a much smaller land footprint. It's got a much smaller water footprint. So in every single way, it's better for you, and it's better for the environment. And they're talking in this article about how they're using LED lights, Philips LED lights, and they're able to have light recipes to exactly match the kind of light required for the different crops. And of course, when it's indoors, they can have those light recipes alter the day length. So in the middle of winter, they can be producing summer foods and so on, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So and they can completely control the light and the temperature, the day length, everything.
It's an offshoot of the type of stuff they do with salmon farming, where they control the salmon's circadian rhythm using lights and daylight and all the rest of it. But the use of the LEDs just makes perfect sense, because you can control the wavelengths of the light so much more effectively, and it's the power as well. So it does just make absolute sense. But have you ever heard of a show called Better Off Ted?
No.
It's like a Dilbert type thing for the office. You should search YouTube for Better Off Ted, where they talk about meat growing in a lab, and it's a really, really funny episode. So it is. It's really, really funny. But yeah, this stuff in hydroponics, just the what is it? The strawberries are a great example. Strawberries, when they're growing in the polytunnels, don't taste as nice as when they're growing outside. And
that can be a function of the type of strawberry that's used, because there are different varieties.
It's entirely possible. It is entirely possible. But I think that being able to grow in these environments would be I would like to taste your strawberries all year round, rather than the sort of the 3 or 4 weeks you have in June. So
yeah,
definitely,
completely. Not a lot of people know this, but I did my primary degree in plant science and postgrad as well.
Yes.
And one of my colleagues, Tim Roach, is now working in University College Cork. He was doing his PhD at the same time, and his PhD was on this kind of stuff. Yeah. Exactly this kind of stuff. Growing plants in vitro.
Are you Dr. Tom?
No, I didn't finish. I got distracted by computers. Things went downhill from there.
You couldn't have been distracted by anything useful, like ladies. No.
That too.
But yeah,
years post grad, and I got a paper out of it, which is nice.
Nice.
So, nice. Anywho, we'll get off me and get back onto the real news.
Absolutely.
And this one I thought was a nice one. So, if you're familiar with Waze, Google's Waze, Waze was a startup out of Israel that Google bought last year, I think it was, for about $1 billion.
Yeah.
And what it does is it's a GPS app, and it follows it tracks all its users as they're using the application. It tracks where they are, and it therefore knows the traffic conditions in any place at any time. So if you're using it and you tell it where you want to go, if it already knows there's congestion in one particular area, it'll flag that for you and suggest alternative routes.
And so you can also tell it that you're in a traffic jam, so it crowdsources all that information.
And you can also tell it things like speed traps and that kind of thing as well.
I wouldn't do it.
So it's a great little application, and it was a very obvious acquisition for Google. And now what they're doing now, in Israel, they're trialing this. What they're doing is, because they know where people typically go to and from, they're coming up with a ride-sharing application where people can say, I want to go to the office today, and the app already knows where the office is, or you can say where you want to go, and it goes, well, I already know this other guy is going to take that route, or this other woman is going to take that route. So if you want to share with them, you share some of the costs of the journey as well. You pay some, towards petrol and wear and tear and that kind of thing. You get a cheap trip to wherever it is you want to go. They get some money towards their making the trip. Everyone's happy. There's less cars on the road. Everyone's happy. Now, to make sure that they don't get into a fight with Uber and Lyft and these other ride-sharing apps, what they do is they limit it to you only being able to give 2 lifts per day. So when you go to work in the morning and when you come home from work in the evening, that kind of thing. So you can't make a livelihood out of it the way Uber can. But it does work as a ride-sharing one for people who are just going to and from work. So as I say, it's in beta right now in Israel. Whether it becomes a fully fledged product or not, we'll have to wait and see. But we've also, I'm not sure, I don't think I saved this one, but I also saw a story this week where Uber said to
Tesla, they said Tesla give it 2,000 electric cars in something like 2020.
2020, yeah, that's it, because Tesla's Elon Musk has come out and said that by 2020 their cars will be fully autonomous.
Yep.
And Uber said, okay, well, we'll buy a ton of them off you if they are. So the whole space is really getting so exciting to see all the changes that are happening.
I know.
It's awesome. It really is. You know, it's oh man, and you know, speaking of Google as well, this next story I saw is and their autonomous cars. They were just showcasing their autonomous cars, or not showcasing, I guess, but actually trialing their autonomous cars. They were just trialing them around Mountain View in California, but now they've started doing it in Texas, in Austin as well. So it's going to be tough for them to get countrywide in any particular country, because they need incredibly detailed maps and up-to-date maps of roads. But that will slow the adoption of autonomous vehicles down considerably. But we will get there, and this is just another step in that journey. It's not just happening in California now; it's happening in Texas as well, and it will slowly eke out around the rest of the world. So, I
wonder if they did it in Texas because of the, you know, it is quite a, there's not a massive amount of, or what's the word I'm looking for? There wouldn't be the level of legislation required in Texas. You know, Texas is quite a loose state.
A government-free zone.
Yes. You know, but no, it's one of those states where, you know, it is quite a Republican state. So the amount of government legislation and the size of government in Texas is a lot smaller than a lot of the other states. So I'm wondering if they
if they're starting off in California, I mean, that's the opposite of Texas in terms of government regulations. So they've had their trial by fire there. It's going to be easier for them to do it anywhere else, I reckon.
Yeah. So, but
we'll crack on. This next one talks about, again, electric vehicles. I said there's a lot of transportation today. And Norway have an incredible amount of electric vehicles in their fleet. Basically, they registered 8,112 plug-in cars by March of this year, which is a 40% increase from 5,775 at the end of the same quarter in 2014. So they now account for a third of new vehicle registrations in Norway. So 1 in every 3 cars registered in Norway now is a fully electric vehicle, which is, you know, incredible. And why that? Well, it's explained here. It's all about the incentives. Norway has decided to heavily incent electric vehicles. So the electric cars are exempt from VAT and purchase tax, which on average add 50% to the cost of a vehicle. So right there, vehicles are significantly cheaper to buy. They're also exempt from road tolls, tunnel use charges and ferry charges, and they get free parking, free charging, and the freedom to use bus lanes. So unbelievably well incented, and you know, as a result, you can see the payoff. So I guess for any country who is interested in increasing the share of electric vehicles in their fleet, you've got a model right there to work with. You know, just follow a similar model and you'll increase the percentage enormously in a very short time. They are dialing back now because the incentives have been so successful, but it's added a huge fleet of electrics to the road cars in Norway. It's you know, tremendous story there. And this other one I saw, this other story in transportation I saw, which I thought was fascinating as well, was this truck. BMW are rolling out a truck, not one that they've generated themselves. It's not manufactured by BMW. They're using it to move parts around, but it's manufactured by another company. It's manufactured by a company called Sherm. But it's a full typical 18-wheel type truck, which moves a full-sized, you know, load around, and it's fully battery electric. It's not a hybrid, anything like that. It's fully 100% battery electric truck, and it's the first one that has been put on the road in Europe. It's built by a Dutch manufacturer called T-Berg. They're using it, as I said, to move parts around. They reckon that this project, they'll gain valuable information on what's possible with electric trucks in the future for logistics. You know, trucks and large vehicles like that are responsible for a huge amount of the particulate pollution you get on roads. Cars, not so much, because if you look at cars, they don't consume as much fuel, number one. And number two, they're not used as much, you know, unless they're like a taxi, which is going, you know, 10, 12 hours a day. Typical cars are used 1% of the time during the day, and the rest of the time they're sitting idle. Whereas trucks and large logistics vehicles like that are typically going 12 hours a day at least. Well, so if you can move them over to electric. Sorry?
It costs money not to have them moving. It's the same with planes. So it is.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. Yeah.
Do you know what I actually find the best bit of this story? The charge time. 3 to 4 hours to charge the truck.
A truck of that size, yeah.
That size with a range of 100 kilometers. That is phenomenal. That that means overnight it can actually charge and then do the 100 kilometers. And as you say, it's being used to move parts through the through the factory complex. That's perfect.
Sure, but even if it has to go on a 100-kilometer run, it can make the run, unload, reload, and charge at the same time, and then go back. You know, it's I know loading and unloading wouldn't take 3 to 4 hours, but you know, you'd get it would take, depending on where you're doing it, it gives you a bit of time anyway. So it's impressive. It's really impressive, and you know, that kind of thing is only going to improve over time. And you could get situations like you have with the Tesla, where maybe you have rechargeable batteries waiting for you. So you get to the site, dump the batteries, put in charged ones, and drive back. Yeah,
exactly.
So it's it's exciting as well, because for me, the biggest thing about this, like the electric planes that we're going to talk about in a second, this is a proof of concept which shows where we're going. And these vehicles are particularly polluting. So if we can move them to electricity, it's a huge shift. It's really important. Speaking of planes, so we saw that the channel between the UK and France, for the first time, we had an electric plane fly over it in the last 24 hours. And in fact, not alone did we have one, we had two. So Airbus announced that they were going to do it. And if they did, this French pilot decided to beat them to the punch. He's a noted stunt pilot, according to this story in the Telegraph. Yeah. His name is, oh God, his name is Hugues Duval, I'm going to say. He crossed it in an electric aircraft hours ahead of Airbus's attempt. And not alone did he fly over the channel, he also flew back afterwards. So he did 2 crossings, and then the Airbus team did their crossing.
Yeah, the Airbus team are actually calling foul over that, saying that he was actually launched from another plane, whereas they took off from the ground. I don't know what the efficacy of the statement, the truthfulness of the statement, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter. The 2 of them managed.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like you say, the fact that we've had 2 separate planes cross the tunnel. I keep saying the tunnel. Cross the channel. Oh God, I need another coffee. Cross the channel. It's late Friday afternoon. Cross the channel in 24 hours is pretty amazing. And you know, it again speaks to the electrification of aviation, which is, you know, something which is going to be making huge changes to flight. Again, it's not going to be something that happens today or tomorrow, but Airbus have this particular Airbus plane that crossed it is going to be a commercial product that they will be releasing in 2017.
Fabulous. So, there's an Easter egg in Iron Man 2 that you may have missed. So in the bit in Monte Carlo, when they're in the restaurant, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark talks to various people in the restaurant, and one person talks to him about an electric plane. That's actually Elon Musk.
Oh wow!
I didn't realize that. I didn't actually realize that until I came across it on IMDb. And whenever I actually went back and watched it, I thought, oh my God, it actually is. Because I just thought he was some random person talking about an electric plane, and he's going, yeah, we'll make that happen. And you're just sitting there going, oh my God. And now we're looking at it now, which is absolutely amazing.
Which Iron Man movie was it?
Iron Man 2.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's in Monte Carlo whenever he comes up against Mickey Rourke as Whiplash. So
okay.
Just before he decides to go and jump in the car and do the race himself.
Interesting.
So, yeah, Easter egg to watch out for.
Absolutely, got to go and look that up as well now. Superb. Changing topics though, going into a bit of hardware stuff. Yeah, we saw IBM come out this week with its first 7 nanometer chip. I mean, we're only starting to see chips come to market that are 10 nanometer. Yeah, and this one, it's a prototype. It's not a commercial product, but it's a 7 nanometer chip. I mean, that's these ones, 7 nanometer chips. We're not going to see them in computers for another 2-3 years at least. Yeah, but this is, you know, another further proof of concept, which shows that, you know, Moore's law is good for another 2-3 years at least. Yeah.
Well, the thing about it is that the chip manufacturers, because the fabs require refits when they change down to these things, you know, they've been, you know, the 14 nanometers at the moment that the chips are at, you know, they're already at 10 and 8 in the labs, so they are getting ready to scale that up to production. But the point that we talked about earlier on, you know, this is not silicon. This is silicon germanium, because once you get down past a certain, I think it's between 8 and 10, you actually start to see quantum tunneling effects of the electrons in the actual channels and a lot of leakage. So it is phenomenal just as an achievement at 7 nanometers. So
yeah, it's amazing.
It really is. I wonder how many patents they got off this, or how many patent requests they have, because obviously IBM is the world leader in being granted patents.
Yeah. They're amazing. They're a complete engine of for patents, aren't they? It's I don't know how many hundred they get every year. It's 500 or 600 a year or something ridiculous like that.
But the thing about it is, I find it interesting as a company that is so focused on patents and patent generation, they don't seem to wield that power inappropriately. You know, they're not like patent trolls.
No, absolutely not.
So that's it is an interesting one. But I thought IBM were also selling off their fabs as well. So this is interesting.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. This was done in partnership with a company whose name I've forgotten, begins with a G, if I remember correctly, who are going to be the ultimate manufacturers.
Global Foundry.
There you go. Thank you. I knew it began with a G. Yeah, Global Foundries. So it was done in conjunction with Global Foundries, and yes, Global Foundries will be the ones who, at the end of the day, are rolling these out.
Yeah.
So.
Because it's not a cheap business. Fabbing is definitely not a cheap business by any stretch of the imagination.
No, God, no.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I have a cousin who is heavily involved in fabbing. She went to, I want to say Malaysia, I think it was, back in the 90s.
Yeah.
To set up Intel's fab there from a greenfield site. She's an industrial engineer.
Yeah.
Herself and the hubby both worked for Intel, and they went out and, you know, literally from a greenfield site, they built up Intel's fab out there. So,
Jesus.
yeah, it's a lot of challenges in doing that. I have to think.
Jesus, yeah, absolutely.
So, but talking of making things smaller, there's a link for you now.
Oh, seamless segue. It was nearly as good as my feeding the world.
So BBC have launched a new thing, or are launching. It hasn't actually been launched yet. They've pre-announced it.
They have, yes.
It's a bit like the Raspberry Pi. It's one of these little boards with lots of IOs on it and LEDs. And you can see at the top there, that's a micro USB connector. So they're launching this. They're going to give 1 million of them away across the UK to schools and organizations like that, principally schools, I think, to the students in the schools to help them, you know, come up to speed on programming and that kind of thing, and hardware and software and interfacing and all that kind of good stuff. It's free programming toys for schools. Which is, you know, in one way it's fantastic. It is, no doubt about it. In another way, I sometimes wonder when schools get things like this for free, do they value them? I guess it's schools, so that, you know, they value anything they get for free. The biggest obstacle I see to this, I think, will be getting the teachers up to speed enough to be able to teach, you know, how to do these things. And they've thought of that to a certain extent, because they say they're going to roll out this big website to help support this MicroBit as well, with lots of code samples and things like that on it. I mean, if you are interested in learning a bit about this, the link for this is, you know, in the show notes as always, but as well as just this BBC announcement about it, there's also this site here. It sounds like a bit of a link bait. It's on Tech Radar. 10 things you need to know about the BBC MicroBit. But actually, if you go through the 10 things, if you click through them, there is some interesting information that isn't obvious from the original article on the BBC site. There's a couple of things I saw in this that I didn't see in the original. So it's worthwhile if you're interested going through those.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about it in the show, and the Chancellor, George Osborne, made some funny comments, and they were picked up by Stuart Laughlin in Diginomica, and he wrote a very, very good piece about whether the BBC should be doing something like this as the nation, the UK and the nation's broadcaster. I don't necessarily disagree with him, but I do think that I didn't see the Raspberry Pi Foundation on this list of partners, and given that the Raspberry Pi Foundation, the Raspberry Pi is in Cambridge, it is a UK organisation, I struggle a little bit with the idea of bringing out a new hardware form factor whenever you have such a successful one in the Raspberry Pi. So, but ultimately, it's a very, very nice little piece of kit. It has a lot of uses. As we discussed, as a wearable, it has an LED screen that you can turn stuff into. You know, you can show output and all the rest of it. So I think the right partners are there. It's a great wee tool. So it is, and you can get a lot of fun out of it. A hell of a lot of fun out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the Raspberry Pi, and you're right. It is potentially a competitive product, but the BBC have said that it's designed to complement rather than compete with it. And the founder of Raspberry Pi himself told the BBC that he thought it was a bit of a fun device, saying there's something about hardware that really fires kids' enthusiasm. So he doesn't seem to see it as a threat as such. So, and BBC are saying, yeah, it's more complementary than anything else. So, you know, here's hoping, because the Raspberry Pi has done amazing things in the last couple of years since it's been launched.
At the end of the day, the BBC is trying to reclaim the glory that it took from the BBC micro revolution in the 1980s, that inspired and gave a platform for, you know, the tech people that we have now. And that I love the idea. I really do. I think the BBC is one of those organizations one of the only organizations that can unite people under that banner without commercial pressures and backstabbing coming to bear. So I fully applaud the thing. I creating another device, I just have a little bit of a problem with. Not a massive one, but I just think, did you really have to? Yeah.
Sure. No, I get that. We'll plow on though, because we're very short of time, and we still have a few stories to get through. So I saw this one. Beer, exactly. I saw this one, and it was written up in TechCrunch, and I've come across it before when it was a Kickstarter project. PicoBrew created this device. Not sure what we're calling it. For brewing beer, and basically it's like your Nespresso for beer. So what it does is it just tells you how much ingredients to add in. Yeah, you add in the ingredients, and it then goes off and does the whole brewing thing for you according to whatever recipes. And it comes with recipes. It's internet connected. It's got intelligence, so it controls completely the temperature. It controls the acidity. It controls, you know, all the aspects that are required for decent beer. It tells you exactly how much of what ingredients to add in and when, and you know, depending on the amount of time, depending on the temperature at the various stages, the whole thing, you get different beers emerging at the end. And it's not alone does it control everything for you. It allows you to have incredible consistency in the beer that it produces. Yes. So because it completely controls everything, then, you know, if you could do the same thing over and over again, you get the same beer over and over again. Yeah. They're marketing it at home brewers, but they're also marketing at brewing companies and microbrewers who want to test out recipes before, you know, scaling them up, which is a nifty idea. Yes. Because I mean, this review, and this is a review by a TechCrunch writer. Yeah. This review, you know, it says that it's incredibly good, and the reviewer, it gives it a very, very positive review. The one downside is the price. It's not cheap. Wow. It's $2,000. So, you know, and that's dollars. If you wanted to buy it over here on this side of the water, it's going to be €2,000 probably. So it's more expensive again. So it's not something you're going to go and buy, you know, just as an impulse purchase. Or it's certainly nowhere near impulse purchase price for me. It's
it brews beer to start with, so it's definitely not an impulse purchase for me. Wine, yeah. Beer, no.
Okay. No, I'm more beer drinker than wine drinker. They have a nice graph here as well of popularity of beer versus coffee, and so consumption per capita, which is similar, spend per year similar, home consumption, okay, slightly more coffee than beer consumed at home. Home creation,
yes,
vastly different.
Yeah.
So with that one stat there, they're hoping to hit that 0.1% and bring it maybe not to 70%, but maybe to 7% at least.
Yeah.
Which would be a nice one for them. I do think though they're going to have to drop the price. That 2,000 is too much if they want to get the home market.
No, it is. Definitely.
A quick note on iOS 9, which launched its public beta this week. I'm not going to go into much detail about it. There are, from a UI perspective on it, not many changes. I have it on my tablet, my iPad, and there's not a huge difference between it and the current iOS 8. It's not going to launch until September.
Yeah,
that's when they'll release it. There's no release date yet, but it's typically September is when they release it. Yeah. The biggest differences are it's supposed to be a lot more stable than iOS 8. It's supposed to be leaner on battery usage as well, and it's got a news app which hasn't launched in Europe yet. It's US only, so I haven't had a chance to test that. And the Notes app is far better, which is nice. I have tried that, and that is nice. The other thing that comes with it is there's a change in how they handle two-factor authentication, which is important if you've had issues with your Apple ID. And this article written by Owen Williams was famously hacked about a year and a half ago. He had his Apple ID hacked.
God, yeah, I remember that. He lost everything.
Lost everything, yeah. He eventually managed to get it back, but there are problems with the way Apple were managing IDs before now, that you had to have a recovery key, which if you didn't have, you had no way of getting back into your Apple ID account. Yeah. Whereas now, if you download the beta of iOS 9, you can get accounts that had previously been thought to be lost.
Yeah.
So, and several people have done this. They've gotten into their accounts which had been locked for over a year by downloading iOS 9 and going through the new process. So if anyone out there has had issues with Apple ID that they think has been lost, you can get it back if you download iOS 9 and try it out. So that's a nice bit of good news coming out of there. Absolutely. I'm going to rush through these last 4 stories, Chris, because we've gone over the hour. So a couple of quick things. There's a laser breathalyzer which can sniff out disease. Basically, you just breathe out into the breathalyzer, and it can find different diseases based on molecules coming out from your breath as you exhale. There's this really interesting one about stem cell dental implants which grow new teeth right in your mouth. So basically, instead of getting an implant which is sore and takes several weeks, because it has to be done in stages and it's expensive and so on, you can now get this new they call it human molar scaffolding, where you get this thing installed in your mouth and you grow a tooth around it yourself, which sounds absolutely amazing. Price-wise, I'm sure it'll be more expensive initially, but over time that price will fall, like all these things.
Well, to be honest, I lost my 2 front teeth in a hockey accident when I was a teenager.
Accident?
I've had a bridge ever since, or I've had posts, and as good as they are, I would gladly pay for one of those. Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you consider implants?
Yes, I did. I have, but I haven't really gotten around to it. I'm quite happy with the posts, so I am. But I know a couple of people who have had the implants, and they think they're absolutely fantastic. They're not done all that often over here in Northern Ireland, So they aren't so.
They're not cheap either.
No, they're thousands of pounds.
Yeah,
So
they're something like here in Spain. I saw them priced at around, I think it was 12 or 1400 euro per tooth.
Yeah. So I think if I had more work that needed done, as in more teeth that needed replaced, I probably would consider it. But the bridge itself is fine. So it is, the two posts are fine.
Okay, cool. Last two stories, both of them Microsoft stories, and both of them based around their HoloLens. This is an interesting one, how HoloLens could teach the next wave of doctors. And basically, it's, as you can see here, you've got a medical student on the left using HoloLens to see an image of a person and having that person's, first of all, skin stripped away, then musculature stripped away, and then looking at their bone structure, being able to walk around those and see them fully in 3D. So, you know, it's an incredibly almost in situ way of learning anatomy, which is incredibly difficult to do, and for medical students typically requires using a cadaver.
Yeah.
So, you know, not having to use a cadaver, which, you know, can't be very pleasant, and being able to do it in a way which is non-destructive, because, you know, once you start working on a cadaver, you can't go back. You know, this is huge. I think this is a massive breakthrough. It isn't a breakthrough yet. They're only trialing it, but, you know, there's no reason why it won't come to market or something similar by another provider, because it makes a huge amount of sense, I think.
It does.
Eventually medical students will have to get their hands dirty, you know, and start opening cadavers and eventually bodies. But, you know, this can make the whole thing far more real beforehand.
But we've looked at this type of stuff before, and for, you know, operation planning and stuff like that as well. You know, these things are very, very useful, and
yeah,
that's
combining it with PET scans of patients or MRIs, or, you know, combining those into something. So, as you say, you can practice the operation before actually doing it. You know, makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
The last, and, you know, leading into that, then this last story, Microsoft is putting up $500,000 in prize money for HoloLens science projects, you know, which will yield those kinds of things. Basically, they're going to give away development kits and to research institutes. So they've opened up a academic research request for proposals. They'll go to they'll award 5 awards, each including $100,000 and 2 HoloLens development kits to accredited universities, which will be announced on the 6th of October. So, you know, those kinds of things. I don't know if 5 is enough.
No,
but those kinds of things will lead to massive advances in what we see coming out of the likes of HoloLens.
You know, there's a company that I think we both know, Keytree, and
yes.
who traditionally have used. You know, I think they had an Oculus Rift style device. It wasn't actually an Oculus Rift at the last couple of years at SAP TechEd, and I've done some phenomenal stuff around augmented reality.
Yeah,
and they would eat this stuff up. They would be doing amazing things with this, but, you know, it would be commercial and business focused. It's just a pity that Microsoft aren't offering the devices, because those guys would do something absolutely phenomenal. And there are lots of other companies who would do, but Keytree are probably in most immediate in my head and sphere of knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I follow Robert Scoble a lot on Facebook, and yes, he's talking a lot about VR and AR, virtual reality and augmented reality. And his view on things is that 2016 is going to be the year of virtual reality, and 2017 is going to be the year for augmented reality. That those two are really starting to bubble up now. There's lots of things happening there, and they're really going to come to the fore in the next 1 to 2 years, the two of them.
Yeah, fabulous.
He's looking at it almost from solely a gaming perspective, which, you know, there's room for that too, absolutely. But I think when you see things like the medical applications and things, even what's the word I'm looking for? Mechanics. People working on airplane parts or truck parts or whatever. To be able to get an exploded view and walk around it before you actually open up the hood itself makes things far easier.
So in the early 2000s, Michael Crichton wrote a book called Airframe.
Yes, I read it.
Yes, so the VR headset in Airframe, whenever Casey's looking for the second black box recorder or the flight data recorder.
How do you remember the name of the character in the book?
Sometimes I just remember just weird stuff. Yeah. So she's using a VR headset and an augmented reality headset to look for this, and this is way back then, and
yeah, because that book was written in the early 90s.
Yes, sorry,
early to mid 90s. It was I think I read it around 95, so 20 years ago.
Fascinating, but really good book. But the one thing that I would say, I'm actually really excited about augmented reality as opposed to VR, quite simply because there were a number of apps, and especially around London, you can actually see augmented reality graffiti in places, which is just whenever if you. I think one of the apps that I looked at when you went to where's the National Gallery? What's the big square?
Piccadilly.
The National Gallery and the plinths and the fifth plinth that's Trafalgar Square.
There you go.
So whenever you go to Trafalgar Square, there's actually there's loads of augmented reality graffiti in Trafalgar Square, which is fascinating to look at. So it's absolutely fascinating.
How do you see it? Because it's obviously only there for a particular application.
Yes, you can only view it through a particular app. So you get your phone and you download the app, and then you actually start to look through your camera lens. And what happens is it uses the GPS to pick up where you are, and then displays the augmented reality graffiti through the camera lens.
There was a very early company. I spoke at an event called Mobile 2.0. I think it was back in 2011 in Barcelona.
Yeah.
And one of the companies demonstrating there was called Layar, Layar.
Oh yes.
And they were the first company I saw that was doing this kind of thing. They were talking about it for property sales. So you'd be able to see houses for sale and things like that, and get details of them, all done through the camera. You just point the camera at it, and you get all the details of the property.
Yes.
So
excellent.
Yeah, tremendous uses. Anyway, we've gone over the last story, gone over the hour. I think it's time to call a halt and say thanks to everyone for watching, and hope you enjoyed it. And we shall see you all next week, same bat time, same bat channel.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.
Bye.